This is Great Britain, land of tea and triumph, of stiff upper lips and soft buttery scones, where we drive on the left, queue on the right, and apologise when it isn't even our fault. We gave the world Shakespeare, Sherlock Holmes, Harry Potter, and a surprising number of James Bonds. And today I'm on a very special British journey indeed, one that spans centuries, crosses kingdoms, and leads us down some rather unexpected paths, all starting here, in old London town.
And here I am, look. This is Buckingham Palace, the official residence of His Majesty the King. Now then, I've got a little bit of a challenge to do, and I'm going to tell you all about it. So, I've been challenged to find 1,000 years worth of monarchs. I know it sounds a bit crazy, but hear me out. So, to go around the United Kingdom and find as many monarchs' resting places, their graves, their shrines or their tombs, and find them all. I'm in London. The band's playing me. And this is the start of the video, start of the challenge. I think the first stop has to be Windsor Castle for our late great Queen Elizabeth II. I'll see you there. Bye. It's very nice of them, isn't it, to play me off for the beginning of this challenge. We get great service here in the UK. So, I've just parked up here in Windsor and I'm heading up to the castle now to find St George's Chapel. But I think we need to have a quick sort of debrief really, because we need to work out just exactly how massive this challenge is. I've done a little list and it turns out there's about 50 members of the royal family, 50 monarchs that I've got to find. That's no easy task. It's going to take a while. But anyway, here they all are.
The current monarch of the United Kingdom is of course King Charles III. He came to the throne in 2022 after the sad passing of his mother, Queen Elizabeth II. Now obviously we're not looking for the final resting place of Charles III, not just yet, and hopefully not for a long time. But starting from Elizabeth II onwards, we've got a list of amazing historical monarchs, everyone from Henry VIII to Queen Victoria, Richard the Lionheart to George III. But it's no easy task, they are scattered all over the country. But with a little bit of research and a car full of fuel, I'm going to try my best to track them all down. So there we have it, 1,000 years worth of monarchs, starting with the final resting place of Queen Elizabeth II and ending with the monarch who was on the throne 1,000 years ago, King Cnut. Yes, that's Cnut, that's how you spell it.
So yeah, I've got my work cut out, haven't I? Anyway, time to go up here.
Massive stone towers, royal flags flapping in the breeze, and enough history packed into one place to make your brain do a somersault. This is Windsor Castle, the oldest and largest occupied castle in the world. It's seen more royal drama than a season of The Crown, and it just so happens to be the final resting place of some of the most famous kings and queens in history.
And I've made it. Here I am, Windsor Castle, home of St George's Chapel. In here is where we've got the most recent monarchs that have sadly passed away, all laid to rest, and I'm really looking forward to going inside. I first came here on a trip about 5 or 6 years ago and it was absolutely brilliant. So I'm looking forward to this. This is Windsor Castle and the start of a very, very long but exciting journey. Here we go.
And right when you think Windsor Castle couldn't get any more majestic, boom, here it is, St George's Chapel. Some of the most famous people in history have spent time in this church, and now, well, it's my turn to have a look around.
And here we are, St George's Chapel at Windsor Castle. Now, I'm keeping the camera away because there are signs everywhere telling me that there's no audio, video, photography of any kind to be done. And normally I would be the kind of person that would, you know, ask for forgiveness rather than permission, but these guys here, well, let's put it this way, this family have a tradition of putting you in a tower and chopping your head off, and I don't really fancy that. I quite like my head, but I'm going to go in anyway, have a look around, and maybe show you some photographs. Not mine though, not mine. Please don't chop my head off.
Well, luckily I was able to find quite a lot of stock footage, so you can all see how majestically beautiful this chapel is on the inside. Kings and queens have been christened here, married here, and even buried here. And I'm here today to pay my respects and show you guys an amazing slice of British history. And who better to start with than our beloved Queen Elizabeth II. Reigning from 1952 till 2022, she became the longest running British monarch in history, reigning for 70 years, 214 days. She bridged the gap from post-war austerity to the digital age, witnessed historical social and technological change, and we even saw her skydiving into the Olympic arena, bossing James Bond about, and enjoying marmalade sandwiches with Paddington Bear. The Queen was laid to rest below here in the Royal Vault in 2022, alongside her husband Prince Philip, the Queen Mother, and of course her father, George VI. George VI reigned from 1936 to 1952. He was known as the Reluctant King after the abdication of his brother Edward VIII. As you know, he struggled with a speech impediment, because we've all seen the King's speech, was the king during World War II, and due to decolonisation of the British Empire, was the last ever Emperor of India. So there we have it, two incredible monarchs, both celebrated here in this beautiful little side chapel. Our next royal resting place is just around the corner. It belongs to George V, who reigned from 1910 to 1936. George V was the king through World War I and head of the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha family. But having a Germanic-sounding name during the First World War wasn't great for the King of England. So it was George V who changed the family name from Saxe-Coburg-Gotha to the one we know today, Windsor, after this glorious castle and their beloved family home. Next up, we've got the king who commissioned the building of this chapel. This is the final resting place of Edward IV. Now, in the 15th century, things in England got a little bit giddy. This was the beginning of the rivalry that still lingers on today. Which is the best side of the Pennines, Yorkshire or Lancashire? That's right, this is the War of the Roses, and this is where things get a little bit complicated. In that time, the crown passed from the House of York to the House of Lancaster and backwards and forwards. So Edward IV actually reigned twice. First of all from 1461 to 1470, and then from 1471 to 1483. He was the first Yorkist king of England, but that pesky Henry VI just wouldn't let him stay king. They battled it out for years, and to add insult to injury, Henry VI is buried just on the other side of the chapel. But in all fairness, Edward's grave is much nicer, so you know, he kind of won that one. As we move just around the corner, we find this. This is the choir. No, not the singing kind, this is the praying kind. This stunning Gothic wooden architecture is perhaps the most famous part of the chapel. I mean, we've all seen this bit on TV, I'm sure. But it also happens to be the final resting place of two of England's most notorious kings, Charles I and Henry VIII. Now, Henry VIII reigned from 1509 to 1547. He famously had 6 wives, one of which is buried with him right here, Jane Seymour. However, Henry VIII did not want to spend the rest of eternity lying beneath this chapel. He had plans for a grand tomb to be made in his honour, but being a superstitious man, he didn't want that to be built while he was alive. He left that to his son, Edward VI. However, when Edward became king, he was only 9 years old, and due to having such a short reign, he never got round to building that memorial for his dad. And when his sister, Mary I, came to the throne, she was still cross with her dad for leaving the Roman Catholic Church, so the duty fell at his youngest daughter, Elizabeth I. And funnily enough, she didn't want to do anything about it either. I mean, in all fairness, he did chop her mum's head off. And talking about people losing their heads, I guess it's quite appropriate that Charles I is here as well. Charles I reigned from 1625 to 1649, although you will see on his grave it actually says 1648. That's because back then we used the Julian calendar, where the year started on the 25th of March, and old Charlie boy got his head chopped off in January. So according to the Gregorian calendar we use today, 1649, according to their calendar back then, 1648. We all got that? Good. Now where was I? Oh yeah, Charles I. So, He spent most of his reign clashing with Parliament, eventually leading to the English Civil War, Oliver Cromwell coming to power, and his execution. I told you, they used to love chopping heads off, these guys. And just on the other side of the Quire, we find Henry VI. Remember all the War of the Roses stuff? He first reigned from 1422 to 1461, and then again in 1470 to 1471. Now I'm guessing he was a little camera shy, because considering the fact he's been buried here for the past 550 years, I can hardly find any photographs of his grave, but hopefully these'll do. Now Henry became king as a baby, was a deeply pious and peace-loving man, but very ill-suited to the politics of the time. So ill-suited, in fact, that all the War of the Roses stuff ended up with him being murdered in the Tower of London, and having the most unphotographed royal grave I can find. Well, actually that's not quite true, and you'll see why in a minute or two. But first, let's wander up here and find Edward VII. Edward VII reigned from 1901 to 1910. He was the son of Queen Victoria and spent 59 years as the Prince of Wales. As a monarch, he ushered in the Edwardian era, a time of elegance, empire and change, and he was nicknamed the Peacemaker as he built diplomatic ties across Europe. This guy was a king in waiting, a monarch of charm, and a bridge between the old world and the modern age. Just behind the choir, we have the Albert Memorial Chapel, and directly below that, in the Royal Vault, we have the final resting places of 3 British monarchs. The vault is actually called George III Vault, and funnily enough, along with another couple of Hanoverian kings, that's exactly who's here. Now annoyingly, there are no markers for these graves, so you'll just have to look at pretty pictures of St George's Chapel. Anyway, George III reigned from 1760 to 1820 and was the king during the American Revolution. However, he was famous for suffering from periods of mental instability, leading to him remaining king, but the country being ruled in regency by his son, who just so happens to be here as well, George IV. He eventually ruled in his own right from 1820 to 1830 and was known for extravagance and lavish spending, covering everything in bling and gold-plating anything that wasn't gold. And when he died, William IV took to the throne, reigning from 1830 to 1837. He was a former member of the Navy and became known as the Sailor King. However, he died without any legitimate heirs, paving the way for his niece to take the throne, Alexandrina, or as she became known when she reigned, Queen Victoria.
Well, that was absolutely brilliant. St George's Chapel at Windsor. And what a great start to the video, eh? 11 monarchs all in one place. It's quite easy, this. But I've got to be honest with you, I'm going to struggle with the next couple. You see, here at Windsor, right now I'm on the Long Walk, which is the long path. Oh, look down here. It's the long path that leads from a big memorial of George III down at the bottom, all the way up to Windsor Castle. And just off the left here is an estate called Frogmore. And Frogmore is where the Royal Mausoleum is. And buried in the Royal put your teeth in the Royal Mausoleum is Queen Victoria. Unfortunately, it's closed to the public because it's in such a state of disrepair, it's not safe. And also there in the grounds is Edward VIII. So Edward VIII, of course, famously abdicated, and then Queen Victoria, well, you know, the Victorian age.
And this is the Royal Mausoleum at Frogmore. Honestly, it's not my footage, don't chop me head off. Anyway, this was built by Queen Victoria after the death of her husband Prince Albert in 1861, and it's more than just a tomb. This is a monument to one of the most famous love stories in British history. Queen Victoria reigned from 1837 to 1901, and her reign defined an entire era, cementing her as one of Britain's most iconic monarchs. She was a symbol of the British Empire, but deeply influenced by personal loss. It's a shame you can't visit here today, because this place is absolutely stunning, and I'm sure if she knew what a state of disrepair it had got into, she would definitely be saying, "We are not amused." Just outside the Royal Mausoleum, we have the Royal Burial Ground. This is where we find Edward VIII, who reigned in 1936. He famously abdicated the throne for love and married Wallis Simpson, an American divorcee. Back then, if you wanted to be king, you couldn't be married to anyone that was divorced. So, Edward was never crowned king, He spent most of the rest of his life in exile in France and was given the title the Duke of Windsor. However, when he died in 1972, his body was repatriated to the UK and he was laid to rest here in the beautiful gardens at Frogmore.
So I guess you could say that's 13 monarchs we found now. Don't worry, there's only another, I can't even think, what's that, 37 to go, something like that. Anyway, I think it's on with the journey. And I think London's calling. Back on the road again.
I reckon we've made a pretty good start there. 13 monarchs ticked off the list, and some big names too. From Queen Victoria to Queen Elizabeth II, Henry VIII to Charles I. And don't forget those warring roses, Edward IV and Henry VI. Almost 600 years worth of royal burials. It's a shame we couldn't film inside, but it really is a brilliant day out. And if you fancy a day at Windsor, make sure you check out the description below, where you'll find all the links you'll need to arrange a great day out. Anyway, no rest for the wicked, I can't chill out just yet. There's quite a lot still to find, and a lot of places left to visit. Honestly, that's how you spell Cnut.
Well, believe it or not, I've made it all the way back to somewhere you might recognise. I'm in London, which means that I'm just outside Westminster Abbey, where quite a lot of our royals are buried. So I think it's time to go and have a look inside. I've got myself a ticket, 30 quid it costs. It's a bit spenny, but hey, you only live once, don't you? So come inside with me. We're going to have a look in Westminster Abbey and see if we can find a few royals.
Standing in the heart of London for over 1,000 years, Westminster Abbey is so much more than a church. It's a living monument to British history. From coronations to royal weddings, this is the resting place of kings and queens. Every stone here tells a story. It's a symbol of tradition, faith, and nation.
I've got to be honest, in all the years I've lived in the United Kingdom, well, all of them, I've never been here before. Looks awesome. Look, have a look. The famous Westminster Abbey. What is it, the same friends? Matt LeBlanc says, Joey says, hands down, best abbey I've ever seen. Something like that. Got to be honest, it's the best abbey I've ever seen. I can't believe in all the years I've been coming up and down to London, I've never actually been in the Westminster Abbey. Well, it's the first time for everything. Let's go and have a look. See if I can find some royals, eh?
So I headed on into the Abbey and was absolutely blown away by the spectacle of the place. Unfortunately, I was greeted by a sign, and that sign told me that there's to be no video cameras to be used, which was a bit of a pain when you're trying to make a YouTube video. However, I decided to use my mobile instead, so most of the footage you'll see from inside the Abbey is actually taken on my phone, which means if it's a bit grainy or it's a bit wobbly, that's exactly why. Anyway, hope it doesn't spoil the fun too much, because I've got lots and lots of kings and queens to go looking for in here. Here we go, I found the first one already, and it's a pretty special one. This is the tomb of Edward the Confessor, and it's special because Edward was the guy who came up with this place and the first royal to have his tomb here. Unfortunately, when I visited, the little chapel that the shrine is in was closed for a private service. So, as you can tell, these are just some photos, but I was able to peep through, and it really is as stunning as these photos make out. Our next king is another Edward. This one's Edward I. Right outside Edward the Confessor's shrine, we find this tomb belonging to King Edward I, or Edward Longshanks as he was sometimes known. Just round the corner I found Henry III, the fourth longest reigning monarch in English history, who built churches and castles all over England, and he had quite a fancy tomb as well. So, if you remember learning about the Battle of Agincourt at school, or perhaps you're a bit of a Shakespeare fan, well, you're going to know about this guy. This is the tomb of Henry V. And he got a snazzy hairdo. And talking about snazzy hairdos, they don't come much snazzier than our next monarchs. This is the tomb of Elizabeth I, perhaps one of the most famous queens in English history. Elizabeth I didn't just rule England, she defined an entire era A golden age of culture from the likes of Shakespeare and Marlowe to exploration of the world from people like Sir Francis Drake and Walter Raleigh. I've got to be honest, I almost missed this one. Right at the foot of the tomb of Elizabeth I is this massive urn built into the wall. This holds the remains of two skeletons discovered in the Tower of London in 1664, believed to be the princes in the tower. And if you know your history, you'll know that one of those princes was Edward V. Now, if you were watching closely a minute or two ago, you would have seen this plaque on the floor, because underneath the coffin of Elizabeth I, you'll find the coffin of her sister, Mary I. When James I became King of England, he had Queen Elizabeth's coffin moved to the same vault as Mary I. He even commissioned a wonderful new monument to sit on top. Only problem is, he only put one of the sisters on, and it wasn't Mary. Bit rude that, innit? Next up, we find the very first Tudor king. This is the tomb of Henry VII, the guy who kicked Richard III's butt at the Battle of Bosworth and started the Tudor dynasty, which would lead to Henry VIII and his love of wedding cake, and of course on to the Elizabethan era. Annoyingly, I wasn't able to get a great video of this next grave, and even if I was able to, it's all faded and worn away over the years. But below this plaque lays the tomb of James I. However, for some reason, with him being the first Stuart king that we had, he's not buried with the rest of the Stuarts. They're all right below these plaques here, in the Stuart vault. Now, first up we've got Charles II. He was known as the Merry Monarch, known for his spending and his love of women, most famously, of course, Nell Gwyn. And he's the guy that restored the monarchy after the English Civil War, and that pesky Oliver Cromwell getting up to mischief. And next to Charlie Boy, we've got the only two co-monarchs of the country. Below here lies William III, or William of Orange as he was known, and his wife, Mary II. These two were actually cousins, and both in line to the throne, so it just made sense for them to rule together. And finally, here we've got Queen Anne, a very special lady. She was the first monarch of Great Britain, when Scotland and Wales and England and Ireland all decided to give up with all the fighting and just get on with it. However, without any surviving heirs, her death led to the end of the Stuart dynasty, and nobody else was buried in this tomb. So there would have been loads of room for James I. I feel a bit sorry for him, really. And look at this, there's even more of them here. This is the tomb of Edward III. This is the guy that started the famous 100 Years' War with France, but he was also the King of England during the Black Death as well. So, obviously, not the luckiest of guys. And right next door to Edward, we've got Richard II. Now, Richard became king at the age of 10 years old, faced a peasants' revolt at the age of just 14, and in 1399 became the first English king kicked off the throne since 1066. He was also the last Plantagenet monarch. And I thought Edward III had bad luck. Wow, this is really impressive here. I've had a good look round inside. Seen some amazing things. So I'm going to have a look in the gardens now. Well worth a visit if you're ever in London. Do it, definitely. Okay, so this abbey is absolutely massive, but it did mean I missed a couple. I can't believe it. Anyway, let me tell you a little bit about them. I found some photographs online, so you'll have to bear with me. So, first of all, Edward VI. He's buried beneath the original altar of the Lady Chapel, but his grave was unmarked up until 1966, when Christ Hospital, the school that he founded, laid a black inscribed stone on the floor. And here it is. And also hidden away on the floor of the Lady Chapel, we've got George II, who just so happens to be the very last monarch buried here at Westminster Abbey. So there we have it, 700 years of British monarchs, 13 kings and 4 queens, all buried here at Westminster Abbey.
Really glad I did that. I've never been to Westminster Abbey before, and I'm really glad I did. Next stop, I think I'll go get some dinner, and then we've got some more to find. Wish me luck.
Oh look, we're absolutely smashing this now. That's 30 of the kings of queens of the last 1,000 years ticked off the list. We've only got 19 more resting places to find, but unfortunately it's not going to be as easy anymore because they are spread out all over the place. But I've got a car full of fuel, I've got a Boots meal deal, and I've got enough podcasts downloaded to last another 1,000 years. So here we go, let's see who we can find next. We've done it. We've made it outside London and found ourselves here at Waltham Abbey. Nestled on the edge of Essex where the River Lee meanders quietly, this is a small town with a surprisingly rich history. Waltham Abbey was originally founded in the 7th century and it became one of the most important religious sites for medieval England. So, you probably guessed it, they've probably got someone quite important buried here.
And there certainly is. So, about 5 or 6 years ago, I took my kids on holiday with my wife to Normandy in France, and we saw the Bayeux Tapestry, because I'm one of these boring dads who makes their kids go to museums on holiday. Anyway, I thought it was amazing. My wife did, really fascinating. My kids thought the whole thing was very amusing for the amount of phallic symbols on it, shall we say. Put it this way, there were lots of willies sort of tapestried into it over the years. Honestly, Google it, there's hundreds of them. But on that it shows the depiction of the Battle of Hastings, one of the most famous battles in English history. And here in Waltham Abbey, at Waltham Abbey, this church here, is the final resting place of, there he is, King Harold II. Now this is the guy who famously got the arrow in the eye in 1066. And here he is. Shall we go and have a look at him? So this is it. This is the final resting place of King Harold II, or as he was known as, Harold Godwinson. Now what's it say on this? It says, if I can read it, this stone marks the position of the high altar behind which King Harold is said to have been buried in 1066. Oh, there you go. So, right round about here, there used to be another abbey, another church here, and this was where Harold was buried.
Harold II was the last Anglo-Saxon king of England. He only reigned for a few months in 1066, but during that time fought two major battles, the Battle of Stamford Bridge, and of course, the one where he got the arrow in the eye, the Battle of Hastings.
So there he is, that's me and Harold. Anyway, that's the first medieval king of sort of like a little stint of them coming up now. So I'm here in Waltham Abbey at the minute on the borders of Essex, but I think it's time now to head down to Kent, because there's another medieval king buried in his tomb in Canterbury Cathedral. So let's go and have a look at him down in Kent, down in Canterbury. All right.
This masterpiece of medieval architecture is the centre of English Christianity. This is Canterbury Cathedral. Founded in 597 AD, this is one of the most important and oldest Christian sites in England.
And I've made it. Here I am, Canterbury Cathedral. Although rather stupidly, and probably just my luck for being daft and not checking beforehand, most of it's closed. You see, I've come on the day of a graduation. It's usually £19.50 to get in, but luckily I came a few months ago, so I've already got my ticket so I can come again. So at least it hasn't cost me anything, but I can get in. Let's see if I can zoom around there. There you go. But I can get in to the Trinity Chapel, and Trinity Chapel is the place I want to get to today, because that's where we're going to find the grave, the tomb, the final resting place of Henry IV, another fantastic and really influential medieval king. So let's go find him. I recognise those two. That's good. I didn't know they were there.
You'd think by now I'd be bored of looking at places like this, but it's just so amazing. They built this 1500 years ago, and the best thing we've managed to build since then is Milton Keynes.
I've got to be really quiet. There's this graduation going on in here. I've got to be on my best behaviour. I found him. He's here. Let's go and have a look.
Henry IV reigned from 1399 to 1413, and this guy is the first English king since the conquests to use English as his primary language. He came to the throne taking it off his cousin Richard II, but struggled with legitimacy and faced multiple rebellions. And he told me he's pretty bored of having to keep quiet for all of these graduations.
Well, we found him, didn't we? Henry IV. Next up now, I'm going to find another medieval king who I think is in Winchester Cathedral. With a bit of luck, there's no graduations there, so I can probably go and have a look.
Standing for over 900 years and once the seat of kings, this holds the bones of monarchs, saints and warriors. This is Winchester Cathedral. I'm sure there's a song about that somewhere.
So, I know we're about halfway through the video now, but this place here really ought to have been the beginning of it. You see, in here, we've got the remains, and this is the final resting place, of course, of King Cnut. Yeah, it's really spelt like that. He's been here for the past 1,000 years, because this guy was the king 1,000 years ago. So, I think we should nip inside, but he's got some of his friends there as well. He's got Harthacnut, his son, and King William II. So, I'm looking forward to looking in here. This is Winchester Cathedral. I've never been to Winchester before, but it's very nice, very posh, very me. So let's go in and have a look, shall we? Looking forward to this.
In the heart of Winchester Cathedral, behind all these vaulted ceilings and the centuries of whispered prayer, we're looking for the high altar. It's been the focal point of worship and ceremony for over 900 years. It's the place where kings were crowned, royal marriages were blessed, and a fat bloke from the north stood with his camera to make videos about dead kings.
So, I'm inside Winchester Cathedral at the minute, whispering again because it's very, very quiet. And I'm on the lookout for three medieval kings. William II, King Cnut, and King Harthacnut. And I think I've just found them.
And this is it, the high altar. This is the sacred centrepiece of the whole cathedral with a real royal past. Because if you just look on the sides here, you'll see high up there are some chests. Now, these are no ordinary chests. These contain the royal remains of English kings buried at the Old Minster here in Winchester, which just so happens to be right where the cathedral is now. When this new Norman cathedral was constructed in 1093, these remains were reinterred in these mortuary chests. However, over the years, especially during events like the English Civil War, these bones were scattered and mixed up, so nobody's exactly sure in which box is which king. But we definitely know we've got quite a few of them here, and 3 of them just happen to be the ones we're looking for. It's widely believed that this is the chest that holds King Cnut, King of England from 1016 to 1035. He was also the King of Denmark and of Norway, and he's the guy that established real stability after all the Viking chaos. It's also believed that in one of these chests are the remains of King Harthacnut, who reigned from 1040 to 1042. However, he was not a popular king at all. He imposed heavy taxes on the country and was severely disliked. And finally, for the kings we're looking for, William II is here as well. He reigned from 1087 to 1100 and was one of the sons of William the Conqueror. He was actually known as William Rufus because of his red hair. However, one day he just went missing, and it's said he died under mysterious circumstances. There are said to be many other kings here as well, dating back even further than 1,000 years. Not a bad place to spend eternity, I guess.
Yeah, that was cool. I like that. Well, there we go. We found loads of medieval kings there. I think it's time to finish this little section and head back up north, where we all talk proper like. Yeah, you see the rest of the kings, they're all a bit further up the country. So, I'm going to jump in the car, stick the radio on, and I'll see you when we're back up north. Oh, on the way there anyway.
We're not doing too bad now, are we? After adding 5 medieval kings to the list, we found the resting places of 35 English and British monarchs. Not many more to go now, but still some big names to get. So, from Winchester, it's up to Gloucester next, and the beautiful Gloucester Cathedral. I still can't believe they spelled Cnut like that. So here we have a place that you Harry Potter fans are going to absolutely love. This is Gloucester Cathedral, another masterpiece in English Gothic architecture, which has been nestled here in the heart of Gloucestershire for over 900 years. Royalty is buried here, and wizards are trained. Yeah, honestly, come and have a look.
So in here, we've got Edward II, and it looks pretty impressive from the outside, doesn't it? So, shall we go in and see if we can find him? Yeah, come on. Well, this is pretty cool, isn't it? You might recognise it, actually, if you're a Harry Potter fan, because they filmed quite a lot of Harry Potter scenes in here.
I told you wizards were trained here. These corridors, or cloisters as they're actually called, are the famous filming locations of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. These are the corridors where Harry hears the basilisk, where the fat lady's portrait once hung, and where messages in blood appeared on the stone walls. But we're not here to find Harry Potter, are we? We're here to find King Edward II, and it just so happens that he's right here. Edward II reigned for 20 years, 1307 to 1327. He was the first English prince to be given the title the Prince of Wales, but he was known for his controversial and unpopular reign. When he died, some people say he was brutally murdered, others believed he died of illness, and some say he escaped to live in exile. Personally, I think he joined the cast of the Harry Potter movies, and he's one of those ghosts you see flying around.
So, that's me and Edward now. Time to drive up the road a little bit and find who we got for next. Oh yeah, I remember King John. Do you remember him from Robin Hood? He was a lion, wasn't he?
So, a few miles up the road and we find this, Worcester Cathedral. On the banks of the River Severn, this place has been here for 1300 years. And it's a bit of a rare one, this. You see, this is a blended style cathedral. From early Norman to soaring Gothic. This is a place where history, royalty and faith meet beneath soaring stone.
I'm here, I've made it. I'm at Worcester Cathedral now. And I'm going to go and have a look inside, see if I can find Johnny Boy. So King John the First. Oh, King John, the only King John. Let's have a wander around and see if he's knocking around. Well, this is interesting. This is a Victorian postbox. There you go. I was going to do a video on postboxes with different kings and queens on it, but then I realised it's actually quite sad, that. Well, it is, let's be fair. I'll probably still do it though. So, I think they're having a little bit of work done here. But here we are. This is Worcester Cathedral. So it's time to go in and find King John.
You'd think by now I'd be really bored of looking at stained glass windows, but look at this bad boy. How awesome is that?
Absolutely incredible cathedral, this. Honestly, it's absolutely stunning. And I'm on the lookout for King John now. So I'm going to go have a look here. Haha, I found him.
And here he is, King John. He reigned from 1199 to 1216, and he's one of England's most infamous monarchs. Cruel, cunning, and the king who was forced to seal the Magna Carta in 1215. This is actually one of the few royal tombs in England that has never been moved or rebuilt, and perhaps it's his only lasting legacy not steeped in controversy. He was hated by his barons, excommunicated by the Pope, and Walt Disney turned him into a lion who sucks his thumb and cries for his mummy. That's my favourite version.
John here in the rest of the cathedral above me. It's pretty impressive, that, isn't it? Absolutely amazing. So there we have it. King John here in Worcester. I've never been to Worcester before. It just dawned on me while I was in there. It's lovely here though. So yeah, so that's that done. So I think we're almost done. I've just got one more to go. And luckily it's on my way back home to glorious Yorkshire. It's just off the M1 and it's a place called Leicester for a guy called Richard III. Shall we go see him?
And here it is, Leicester Cathedral, looking down on a city that hid a secret under one of its car parks for over 500 years. I think you know what I'm talking about.
Now, he famously promised his kingdom for a horse, but what happened to the body of King Richard III after his defeat at the Battle of Bosworth has remained a mystery for more than 500 years. Until now, archaeologists in Leicester have been digging in a car park in the city centre. This morning they announced they'd made a discovery that could solve the mystery.
Well, I found him. Well, I found where they found him, because right in here is the car park where Richard III's body was found. And look, he's on the wall. And here he is. Well, here's his statue. Anyway, Richard III, the King of England. who just so happens to be in here. It's Leicester Cathedral. Inside. And there he is, Richard III. We found him.
Richard III was the last Plantagenet king. He reigned from 1483 until 1485, when he died at the Battle of Bosworth Field, ending the War of the Roses and the Plantagenet dynasty. His death paved the way for the rise of the Tudors, but thanks to Shakespeare, Richard became known as the ultimate tyrant. A horse, my kingdom for a horse. The legend of the hunchback villain was born. He was the last English king to die in battle, but in fairness, he was the first one found under a car park.
Well, I'm back home now, enjoying my my afternoon here in the garden, but we've nearly cracked it. We've nearly got there. There's only a few left to find, but this is where it gets a little bit tricky. You see, I've done all of them in the UK so far, but the rest of them are either lost or they're in Europe. And unfortunately, I ain't got time to go to Europe. But don't worry, you see, I've done a little bit of research.
Well, seeing as so many of our early kings just so happen to be French, you're right in thinking that our first stop has to be France. And we're heading here to Fontevraud Abbey in Anjou. This is the final resting place of two amazing medieval kings. First of all, we've got Henry II, who reigned from 1154 to 1189. This guy was the very first Plantagenet king and famously married to Eleanor of Aquitaine. This is the guy that laid foundations for English common law and centralised monarchy. And next up, we have his son, Richard I, or Richard the Lionheart. He reigned from 1189 to 1199 and was famous for being the Crusader king, leading the Third Crusade against Saladin to reclaim Jerusalem. Although he was King of England, he was very rarely in the country and viewed the kingdom as a source of money for the wars he wanted to fight and left it under others to control. He was seen as the ideal medieval king, brave, noble and heroic, and of course immortalised in tales like Robin Hood. And from Anjou we move to Rouen. You see, at Rouen Cathedral we find the grave of Matilda, who reigned in 1141. She was a pivotal and often underrated figure in English history. She only briefly seized power in 1141, so was never officially crowned queen due to political resistance, but she paved the way for the Plantagenet dynasty and was a trailblazer for women in power. Our next stop sees one of the most famous medieval kings of all time, William the Conqueror. This is Abbey Ho Homs in Cairns. William the Conqueror, of course, reigned from 1066 to 1087 and was famous for being the very first Norman king of England after defeating Harold I to claim the English throne. His Norman conquest changed England forever. The language, the culture, the architecture, everything was transformed. He built castles across England and was integral in starting the Domesday Book, a massive survey of land and wealth in England. And our final stop in France takes us to the capital, all the way up to Paris to the Church of English Benedictines. Here we find the final resting place of James II. James reigned from 1685 to 1688 and was the last Catholic monarch of England. His open Catholicism alarmed Protestant England and the Parliament, and he was eventually overthrown by his Protestant daughter, Mary II, and her husband, William of Orange. He spent the rest of his life exiled in France under the protection of Louis XIV, but still claimed to be the rightful king. And from France, we head over to Germany next. This is the Herrenhausen Gardens in Hanover, and this is where we find the grave of George I. George I reigned from 1714 to 1727. He actually spoke very little English and preferred German, which of course distracted him from the public and from the government, so his lack of involvement in daily politics allowed the Parliament to take on more power. He was famous for starting the Georgian era though, which marked the beginning of modern constitutional monarchy. A whole line of Georges to come.
So they're all the ones in Europe that we can find, but unfortunately we're still missing a few. Now, first of all, we need to talk about Stephen, King Stephen. There was only one of them, and his remains are said to be in Faversham Abbey, but unfortunately they've been lost in history. The same happened with the remains of Henry I, who was supposedly buried in Reading Abbey. And Harold I, he was supposedly buried in St Clement Danes, but I've got to be honest with you, they're all missing as well. And Edgar II, how on earth could we forget him, eh? Well, nobody's got any idea where his remains are. I don't think anybody ever did. So I guess that's it now. We're all done. I can continue sitting here in my garden and enjoying a bit of sunshine. Actually, that's not quite right, and that's why I'm here at the Tower of London. You see, we've been to visit the graves of all the kings and queens, but there was one ruler of England who reigned for 9 whole days, and she's in here. Now, the reason she only reigned for 9 days is because her head fell off. Yeah, I'm talking about Lady Jane Grey. And it just so happens she's buried next to Anne Boleyn, if you've heard of her, and Catherine Howard, or of Aragon. One of Henry VIII's Catherines. Anyway, she's in here, in the Tower of London. And I'm going to go and have a look. Let's hopefully I can take the camera in. They don't like you doing videos, do these royal palaces, do they?
So this is the Tower of London. Built in 1078 by William the Conqueror, it has served as a royal palace, a prison, an armoury, and this is where you'll find the crown jewels and the final resting place of Lady Jane Grey. Here at the altar of St Peter ad Vincula, the historic chapel on Tower Green inside the tower. And here she is. Underneath this altar here, next to Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard, is the final resting place of Lady Jane Grey. Lady Jane Grey reigned from the 10th of July to the 19th of July in 1553, earning her the nickname the 9-Day Queen. She was England's shortest reigning monarch before being deposed by Mary I. She was only 16 or 17 when she came to the throne, and when she was executed right here on this spot inside the Tower of London. Well, we did it. 1,000 years of royal resting places ticked off the list. We managed to visit 37 of them here in the UK. There are of course a few abroad as well, and those that have gone missing too. But what an exciting adventure. I've learnt a load about British history and seen some amazing places. And I have to be honest, I've loved every minute of it. And I still can't get over that's how they spell Cnut.
And we're back. We did it. You know, we started this challenge about 5 days ago, and we started it right here, so it only seems appropriate that we finish it right here, back at Buckingham Palace. What an adventure, eh? We found them all. Well, kind of. The ones we could find, and the ones that were in this country. But anyway, I've had a brilliant time. Hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have enjoyed it, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel as well. And also follow me on Instagram. You can find me at Neil Hurst UK. And if you've really enjoyed this and fancy doing it yourself, have a look in the descriptions below. I'll put the links to all the different places where they are. And you can book a ticket and go yourself. I thoroughly suggest it. Anyway, it's just started to rain now. So I'm going to go back on the tube. What a better way to finish this video, eh? Proper British. It's down.